everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Bram van Heugten. I'm a student, master's student I just finished at Maastricht University in the Netherlands. And I've researched Amsterdam's queer nightlife as my MA thesis called Navigating Amsterdam's Queer Nightlife, Policy, Placemaking, and Commodification. So today in this presentation, I will share some of my research, design, and some of the insights that I've gathered. So first of all, I think it's important to talk about the outline and the methods that I used. So my thesis is situated in Amsterdam. I'm not from Amsterdam myself, but Amsterdam is the capital and has many more queer venues compared to where I come from. So it is a better case study. And I've researched 3 nightclubs / parties, so they're all popular hotspots that cater to different tastes in queer nightlife, but they all consider themselves queer and cater to queer. So, and I think it's necessary to say that I'm trying to focus on like the underground techno queer scene of Amsterdam. Some of them aren't anymore, but they used to be. I think these are the clubs. We have Club Bram, the Réunie, which is the reunion, and Club Nix. And specifically, Club Bram was functioned as a catalyst in researching Amsterdam's nightlife because they had experienced precarious working conditions that left them unable to open for 6 months after the original due date, which had to do with bureaucratic struggles regarding a development permit that was put on hold due to difficulties with the port of Amsterdam, which is located close to this venue. So these precarious conditions were a reason for me to look deeper into how Amsterdam's legislative structures influence placemaking in the night. And I think how I tried to do this is I aim to gather existing queer knowledge and lived experiences of clubgoers in the clubs that I went to as a counterweight to the existing cultural policies surrounding the night. So how I did this was by applying several methodologies. Several methodologies in the sense that it was a scavenger methodology proposed by Jack Halberstam, which upsets the conventional norms of data collection, where the queer part of the method functions as political positioning that questions the normativity of traditional data collection methods, diffusing the academic compulsion toward disciplinary coherence. So what was part of this was document analysis, which we will get into shortly. I also had informal ethnographic interviews, so like a quantitative form of research where I interviewed 50 people at the 3 different clubs. Ethnographic conversations, they're like the real interviews of at least 30 minutes with 3 people, like each club, every club each. And then I also had vignettes, which really encapsulates my ethnographic observations into creative writing. So a vignette is a means to convey lived experiences in a subversive manner, a powerful tool where theory is insufficient to capture the essence of queer nightlife. So with that out of the way, let's dive right into it. So the first question that I asked myself was, how does the city of Amsterdam treat her nightlife? Oh, this one is the correct one. And I looked at 2 documents, the Night Vision and the Implementation Agenda of 2023-2026, created in 2021 and 2023 respectively. So functioning as an economic backbone, the municipality started a project, or like commissioned a project called The Value of the Little Hours, which was released in 2021. And that's where the night culture sector and its economic value is discussed. So since then, the municipality started to really recognize the economic potential of nightlife. And they, the report looked at festivals, so we're talking about Amsterdam Pride and Amsterdam Dance Event, and more general night sectors, so basically everything is open between 10 and 5, or sunset and sunrise. So one thing that I think is important to discuss about this report is that it has the creative class in mind, so a theory by Richard Florida that connects economic growth to the creative workforce. And it's a very heavily critiqued theory, since like Florida's widespread theory can result in gentrification and forces of inequality. So with this in mind, I look back at the 2 documents. So the night vision and implementation agenda focus on the voices of organizers and entrepreneurs in the night. So the said creative workforce, who Amin Ghaziani and Ryan Stillwagon see as people with high levels of social capital, education, and community embeddedness. So having these main actors in these documents implies a focus on the professionalizing the night in the context of the post-industrial consumption-oriented city. So these documents function as a social consensus term coined by Paul Chatterton in 2002 that really sets up the values of the night, right? So the consensus benefits the acquisitive property developers, entertainment conglomerates that are aimed at highly mobile, cash-rich groups. So this created consensus functions as a symbol stimulating nocturnal urban change, a change with neoliberal notions that benefit the acquisitive creative class in the night. So I think this pro-business form of governance is synonymous to the municipality and professionalizing the night. However, puts pressure on alternative nightlife venues in broadening their band to other demographics. So how does this in turn pressure queer forms of nightlife? So the economic growth becomes imperative to be part of this consensus that's created in the two documents that I was talking about. So this pressures marginalized and more radical imaginations of nightlife that are spaces of experimentation with little economic incentive. Rather, the municipality of Amsterdam uses these marginalized communities as part of an instrument in the gentrification and urban regeneration processes that promotes, as part of like promoting hipster aesthetics, and this in turn attracts the acquisitive creative class workforce to the outskirts of the city. And in turn, the subcultural capital of these alternative venues is exploited. Therefore, this streamlining, professionalizing, pro-business form of nightlife governance fails to really recognize the importance and the value of the informal, alternative, marginalized sectors of the night and its nightlife patrons as something more as a tool for urban regeneration. And this is interesting because Amsterdam is very much seen as the gay capital, maybe even of the world. So it's kind of saddening that they just use it as like a title and then do not really add up to any existing policies that could help in actually realizing better spaces. So the next thing that I did was when I went into the clubs. So what do the queer people say in the club? What are their needs? I think this is an important thing to do as somebody that's researching policy, since usually policymakers are very disconnected and not situated in the things that are creating policies around. We know queer clubs and nightlife as spaces of community building, social well-being, and mutual support networks, but I also think it's important to look at these spaces as spaces with hierarchy, power imbalances, substance abuse, physical abuse, many other things. And this is why I thought the Paradoxical Space by Jill Valentine and Tracy Skelton in 2003 is a very interesting concept to apply to this, which sees the queer scene as simultaneously offering potentials while also being subjected to risks. And I created two categories to make it myself easier, and I divided into social and physical vulnerabilities. And I found a correlation between the club's policies that protect queer people and the worries that they describe that I've asked for, which we will get into as we look at the three parties as case studies. So at a party with very clear and an abundance of policies, people tend to inhibit less worries surrounding their physical vulnerability, but the social vulnerabilities of substance abuse and anxiety or paranoia, or like in general emotional well-being or unwell-being will come to the forefront, and vice versa. So a party with limited policies that protect queer people are showing more physical vulnerabilities. So let's go into the case studies. The first case study is Club Raam, and it has a very clear, strong stance on consent and responsibility with using the term queer. And that in practice, this means there's an awareness team. They were the first ones to introduce an awareness team in the Netherlands in 2017 or 2017, 2018, adopted from like a German party in Berlin. They have a strict door policy, a no photo policy, and they also organize social events outside of the clubbing experiences in the same, like facilitated still in the same room, but more in the sense of like a brunch or other social activities. So they were finally able to open in April this year, and it was my first time going to the venue, and I had a lot of fun, and I talked to a lot of people, and many people spoke very positive about Club Bram facilitating a space as like a safe haven for queer people. So the main insights into the worries that are reflected in my data are related again to the internal social vulnerabilities, and the main ones being things that are related to emotional well-being and substance abuse. And I also noticed a pattern with the veteran clubbers here. So there were a lot of people that are already very experienced in the scene. And one of these veteran clubbers, who is also my friend, and I interviewed him for this paper, is Shang Hong, a Chinese interdisciplinary artist who has lived in Amsterdam for a while and doesn't want to go to other places because it was out of place. And I quote, "Obviously, there is a reason I keep going to these parties, because I can feel at ease. I feel like I belong to a community. I can talk to people a lot more easily. But at the same time, it is all very much driven by drugs, and that is not really good for your mental health in the long term as well." Unquote. And then another quote is, "I also try to go more to more normal clubs that everybody goes to. There, it is not necessarily that the vibes are off, but it's more the people that are there that make me as a queer non-white person feel like an outsider." So for many around really facilitates a space of radical acceptance where, you know, Shanghong is an example of that, which in the process subverting heteronormative views and queer clubbing as something only hedonistic or hypersexual. So in the next slide, I'll show a part of my vignette, which honestly is, I think, one of the most fun things that I did in this thesis. So I wrote a vignette about Club Bram as a space of acceptance and subverting heteronormativity. So it is here where you truly get to see the ones that make up the collective entity on the dance floor, where you hug your friends that you haven't seen in a while, where you have introspective thoughts and share stories of life, where you make plans to go to the gender-neutral toilet stalls together and do drugs or have sex, or both. It is in this rhythm of dancing, conversation, sex, and collectively consuming drugs where community is constructed. So I think this vignette really highlights the rhythm and that's present at these parties, and gives insights on lived queer experiences that are usually left unheard, which subverts a more negative customary discussion surrounding nightlife that is all about licensing or regulation of crime or other negative stuff. So the second party I went to was the Réunie, also a party that I've been to a few times and since 2 or 3 years. And it used to be a rave during the COVID era, and there's now a pop-up party at the location Radion, which is a venue where a lot of, like every weekend there are new different parties. And it's a popular spot with many different techno events, but it's not necessarily, so the Radion is not necessarily queer, but this party does attract a lot of queer audiences. So I think one of the keynotes that I've gathered in my research is that I argue that the Réunie weaponizes queer aesthetics. So what I mean by that is a mix of visual social markers that are typically associated with queerness. So these pictures illustrate of the Instagram of the night that I was there, and I can guarantee you I did not see these people. And if I saw them, then they would only be maximum 5% of the aesthetic that is present at the party. So they clearly show this on their branding, on their social medias, and I see this as weaponizing queerness and modifying queerness to attract a specific audience. And this resulted in the party becoming popular with both queer and non-queer demographics. Because both of the venues already being a popular venue and or the social media branding to ensure a demographic of like-minded people. And this is not necessarily a problem as long as there are fitting policy measures to protect the vibe and the energy. Otherwise, I argue this place risks being an area of fantasy for the white cis hetero tourists who stumbled upon the party, because they don't know what's going on. And unfortunately, I think I noticed a lack of policy measures. So there was no strict door policy. You have to be at least a little scared to get in my opinion. And there were no stickers this time for reason. So these stickers at the top, the Réunis, and also at the previous parties, they're the stickers that are used to like cover your phone. And normally there would be stickers, but this time there weren't any. So there's definitely already a change in 2 years of why they didn't do this. I don't know, but that I don't think it's a good idea. But so this lack of policy measures is a deal breaker for Valerie, also somebody who I interviewed, who is a queer Ukrainian refugee and also became friends with. So, and had a deal breaker to decide to go to what party. As they tell me, the story that they found themselves in a long queue at Radion, which is the same venue as the Reini, but for a different queer party called Pax Romana. However, went to the club round and sat the first party due to the straight audience Valerie selected in the queue. And I also wrote a vignette for the Reini, and this really highlights okay, good, thank you. It's situated in the backstage area, and it really shows a sense of hierarchy and how the social status is linked. So only the elite of the party, formed by a complex connection of who knows who, are allowed to vote. I admit I was obsessed with this unique area, mainly because of seeing the DJ or the hot dancer that I followed on Instagram for the first time in real life, right there, sitting on the couch. But then an eerie feeling dawned upon me. The feeling that at any point now, someone will come up to me and ask me how I got in here. I know this is very unlikely to happen, and maybe it's just the drugs in my system that are talking, but still, I ask myself, am I cool enough? Let's party. Oh wait, sorry. So this party of the vignette really highlights the politics of the backstage and the influence of cool aesthetics. Something that I ironically discussed backstage with one of the people I also interviewed, named Remy, who says the following, quote, from the moment you start as a DJ or you start doing something else within the scene, people will start to look at you differently. For example, people start to invite you to the after party, to the backstage, etc. Another quote by them is, if for once you do not look cool enough, people will treat you differently. Okay, now to the last party, which is at Club Nix, also situated in the neighborhood of Amsterdam, which is one street called Behavioural. And well, one of the first, I'd never been there before researching, and one of the first instances of people talking about Club Nix at the other parties is I heard loss of culture. I heard they sold their soul to the straights. So what happened here? They had a big change over the years from a very hip contemporary queer performance club like 10 years ago to a space that's considered mainstream. A club that was full on catering to queer audiences, but now has one designated queer night on a Saturday, which completely overthrows Club Nick's original purpose of being a gay bar. And this also results in Nick's former patrons going somewhere else. So I think we're talking loss of culture and sold to the straights, but more dangerous results are the negative experiences with straight audiences, seen in multiple cases of different forms of harassment. This is seen in Valerie, for example, not going to the Club Nix anymore, feeling bald and naked inside the club, and it's in relation to the non-queer demographics, but especially having to go outside for a smoke and end up in the middle of the street. So, like, you literally end up in the middle of the street. And another interesting thing is that you're visible on the street, right? But you're also visible in the club. There's no photo policy, but this is the opposite. There's a Polaroid machine camera where me and my best friend took advantage of. So queer people end up leaving since it doesn't cater to the same crowd anymore. And I've noticed that only a few of the OGs stay out of loyalty. And in this next part of the vignette, I explain a bit of the inside because it's hard to explain. And there are 3 floors, with all floors having a designated genre. You have pop, R&B, and the last one is house and techno. So the last floor is not as busy as the other ones. Beside clubbers needing to visit the toilet stalls that occupy half of the floor, the other side houses techno music, with only a few club patrons to be found. Of these patrons, a few, presumably straight men, are flaunting their masculinity by performing pull-ups from the dark wooden beams that support the roof. After enjoying the show from a safe distance, I say to my friend, let's go for another cigarette. So I think this really explains how heteronormative energy can change the energy in the club. There were almost no people there. And there's the Let's Go for Another Cigarette mention really shows that you'll rather be outside and like experience there the ball and nakedness than, or like go somewhere else. But, sorry? I have to quit?
Yeah, you're 22 minutes already.
Really?
Yep.
Oh shit, sorry. Oh, then I'm done. That was it.
Hello everyone, I'm Bo van Smoorenburg and I'm presenting the thesis I did at the University of Amsterdam. It's my first time presenting at a conference, so bear with me. And the thesis is called The Queer Art of Clubbing. First I will start with a short story. A group of three walks up to an old prison building in a suburb of Amsterdam. The muffled sound of a heavy bass is already palpable from a distance. Although it is a Sunday and about 3 in the afternoon, a line is formed at the door. Many are turned away and walk off with a disappointed look. Frequently, groups of people walk past the line, dressed in completely black or eclectically put together outfits. They greet the person at the door and are allowed in. Finally, the beginning of the queue is reached, and the group is looked up and down by someone wearing a cowboy hat and boots, a black leather matrix coat, and hair painted in leopard print. After a short silence, they are allowed in. As they enter the dance floor, they are hit by the repetitive sounds of very fast-paced, energetic techno, feeling the vibrations of the bass in their body. The basement of the club is dark, but the dancing silhouettes of others are visible in the strobe lights. Sweat is dripping from the ceiling, and 3 guys kissing each other slip away into a dark space. The group moves to the front, and taking turns, they each sniff from a bottle, spelling out rush. As their dancing synchronizes, they become one and transcend into the electronic frequencies. So queers and queer aesthetics have been at the forefront of the electronic dance party phenomenon, and through a combination of electronic music, dancing styles, drug taking, and free sexual and gender expressions, queers have been able to find relief from oppressive regimes of everyday life at the electronic dance party and experience a sense of belonging. Clubbing plays a role in the becoming queer of many, but what makes a night queer and who gets to live this experience? So the main research question I present is, how do queer clubbers negotiate queerness at electronic dance parties in contemporary Amsterdam? And to answer this question, I conducted and analyzed 12 interviews. So seemingly wild, cool, and open-minded queer spaces and parties became increasingly visited by non-queer people in Amsterdam, like Bram, for example, explained about the Club Nix. This resulted in feelings of displacement among queer attendees. And with the popularity of some queer parties currently in Amsterdam, organizers have started to actively battle the displacement of queers. For example, by sharing information through social media platforms or being outspoken about their queer positionality, but also by enforcing more exclusive door policies. Exclusive door policies are a clear manifestation of the boundary law practice. Judith Butler described how queerness can be seen as an outness, but at a queer party, queerness can be seen as an inness. And due to its contingent and fluid meanings, queerness can be difficult to read in practice. The ability to become an insider at parties depends on the capital a clubber possesses. Capital in the form of music knowledge, speaking the language, the right appearance, and knowing certain people. Research shows how some queers can feel pressure to conform to dominant queer culture in the way they dress or act at parties. So this picture on the slide is a picture of the line at the famous club The School. It's closed this January, but for a lot of the people I interviewed, this was very special and important in their clubbing experiences. And it was also known for stricter door policies, especially before COVID. So to study how queerness manifests at parties, I applied Jack Halberstam's formulations on failure and wildness as queer aesthetics. Halberstam sees failing as something that queers have always done, failing to live up to dominant norms of sexuality and gender, and failing to conform to the mainstream, and possibly finding rewards in doing so. Halberstam proclaims that failure can be a style or a way of life for queers. He also proposed looking at the wildness in society, so the feral, the disorderly, the unruly, the loud, the disruptive, and the animalistic. So that those are symbolic descriptions that have undoubtedly been applied to the phenomenon of electronic dance parties, and especially queer ones. So wildness can be idealistic and unproductive. It can be about living in the moment. And I would argue that the electronic dance party has been and is currently a site where queers can feel and become wild in the darkness of a nightclub. And whether these aesthetics are visible in the contemporary scene of Amsterdam, that is something I address in analysis. So for my thesis title, I took some inspiration from Jack Halberstam. And I didn't put dates, but this was published in 2011 and this one in 2020. So when a party is entered, queers can find themselves in a setting that has all the properties for a successful ritual. And a successful ritual can lead to embodied experiences of collective effervescence, which results in emotional energy, feelings of solidarity and connectedness for the people that participate. So queer parties create a space where queers can feel part of an imagined community with a shared identity, and which creates in turn a sense of belonging. Portuguese scholar, so I hope I pronounced it right, João Florencio goes even further. He theorizes it can offer a high beats per minute means to individual and collective self-invention. So again, the main question was, how do queer clubbers negotiate queerness at electronic dance parties in contemporary Amsterdam? I divided this question in 3 sub-questions. The first one is about the boundary drawing. How are boundaries of belonging at queer dance parties drawn by the respondents? The second one is how are queer aesthetics expressed and experienced? And the last one is how is the becoming queer of the respondents shaped by their experiences at the parties? So I wanted to understand the lived experiences of the queer clubbers in Amsterdam. So I interviewed 12 respondents. The criteria were that they naturally frequently attend queer parties in Amsterdam, and also that they self-identify with queer, or that they feel like, or that they feel connected to the term. I wanted my sample to be diverse in terms of sexuality and gender, so I made an effort to find more genderqueer people and women, not more in, but more like that they were represented in the sample, and because those are groups that have shown to be marginalized within queer nightlife spaces. The interviews were semi-structured, and I analyzed the data through the coding program Atlas TI. So, my findings. First, how are the boundaries of belonging at queer electronic dance parties drawn by the respondents in the study? So, I found that the fluidity and the vagueness that comes with queer as an identity marker is strongly valued by the respondents in terms of their self-identification. But how queerness is experienced seemed to go way beyond sexuality and gender. And it was importantly experienced as a state of doing instead of being, and through interactions with others. So a queer mode of doing was characterized by the respondents as treating others with kindness, respect and care, acting non-conforming and conforming and authentic. So Vicky, for example, said about this, you really notice it in someone's personality. It doesn't matter what you do with your sexuality or with your appearance, it's on the inside. I think of more acceptance and empathy. And Ezra said, a straight woman that goes out to a queer party who is committed to the queer community, speaks up for trans women, dates a trans man, I see that as a queer person. But then when talking about the outness that queer produces, sexuality and gender did seem centralized. So straights were continuously opposed to queers during the interviews, and especially intrusive straight men. And being non-conforming in terms of Gender also seemed central because harness-wearing muscular gay men were also other during the interviews. And here the respondents seem to draw lines between gay and queer. The people I interviewed have described how they experienced that people in these groups often adhere less to the described queer mode of doing and made them feel unsafe at times at parties or made parties feel more normative. And lastly, so the people I interviewed, they said they enjoy electronic dance party the most when they feel like it's truly queer, which according to them was when they saw the crowd as queer in an intersectional manner, and to create a queer crowd and boundaries for outsiders that could jeopardize the social safety at a party, door policies are implemented. And many respondents took a separatist position when it came to door policies, where queer identification seemed crucial to them. Some had a less separatist view and seemed to find it more important that people can adhere to the described aspects of the queer mode of doing, so treating others with kindness, respecting care, and acting non-conforming and authentic. So the second question, how are queer aesthetics expressed and experienced by the respondents at electronic dance parties? So repeatedly the atmosphere at the parties was called wholesome by the people I interviewed. And this seemed to relate to the queer mode of doing that people experience. And I argue that this wholesome atmosphere is partly shaped by the care that is put in at the parties to create a safer space and the following feelings of safety that the respondents experience at these events. So care in the form of creating house rules, awareness teams, and door policies. So these brave spaces enable queer clubbers to experience and express wildness, leaving behind usefulness and order, and fail to adhere to dominant norms in society. The respondents express these aesthetics, for example, by centralizing partying in their lives, expressing a love for partying on Sundays, going to illegal raves, going to weekender parties. So like I put a poster here that's from a coming up ADA party at a queer club in Amsterdam that's going on for the entire weekend. I think Bram is going to that party actually. And people express the willingness to live in the moment and valuing the unpredictability of parties. So Patty, for example, said about going to a queer rave in Amsterdam, I really love that unexpected spontaneity, the weird moments, standing under a viaduct somewhere or having to run from the police. When the police come, you act like you're heading home, but then something else comes up in the group chat and you end up going there because everyone's still in the mood. So clothing and appearance play an important role at the parties, and I also saw the aesthetics of wildness and failure in the way people dress or undress at these events. Non-conformity and authenticity seem to be at the core of a queer mode of dressing. So Vicky, for example, said, the other day I wore this sort of bright yellow top with bright pink hair and these bright green pants. I really looked like some kind of Pokemon trainer or something. But also this fashion forwardness is can also be experienced as intimidating. In some instances, a normative atmosphere seems to be experienced, where stereotypical notions of queerness are performed and the aesthetics of wildness and failure are less visible. So Robin said about this, my friend doesn't like a specific party. She feels like she can't measure up to how people look there. She prefers going out in black loafers with dark jeans and a regular black t-shirt. Then at this party, people ignore you because you don't look like the majority there. So lastly, I addressed the becoming queer. How is the becoming queer of the respondents in the study shaped by their experiences? And everyone I interviewed expressed that they've experienced intensely felt collective effervescence, especially at the parties they experience as safe and truly queer. Through those experiences, their feelings of being part of the community grew, and a sense of belonging at these events, to different extents, was reflected by all respondents. For many, community seemed like a core part of being or doing queer. So Patty said about this, for the acceptance of my sexuality, queer parties have been very important. Where the outside world often tells me that it's not okay, I feel like it is a warm blanket. Being at a queer party, you are surrounded by the community. I think that's healing and beautiful. So, yeah, my respondents have exemplified and demonstrated how they experienced affirmation, inspiration, and empowerment at queer dance parties within their own community, which created room for self-invention for many. The respondents explained that they have experimented with their gender expression, sexuality, and creativity in a broader sense, and how they gain more confidence through these experiences. It seemed to have played a fundamental role in the becoming queer for most people I interviewed, and showcased instances where they have failed to conform to the mainstream and have found rewards in doing or being queer. Magdalena said, for example, about the way they dressed at something they call a straight event. I really like being the only person with a dick in a dress at the whole party. It's iconic. So my analysis of queer's boundary making showed that the fluid and contingent meaning is very much valued by the respondents in terms of their self-identification. But the vagueness of queer's boundaries seems to create difficulties when more exclusive door policies are in place. Queerness is difficult to read, and an intelligible performance of queerness becomes necessary to gain entrance into a queer party and find belonging. I argue that this could advance a dominant, more normative queer appearance, and as Butler said, if the term queer is to be a site of collective contestation, it will have to remain never fully owned. I argue that a form of ownership over queerness is created when clubbers can be deemed queer enough to enter. Additionally, parties can lose some characteristics of the queer aesthetics of wildness and failure, because the atmosphere becomes more normative. Nevertheless, this seems like a necessary sacrifice to decrease the chances of a displacement of a queer audience, especially at events that are popular in Amsterdam. Door policies seem to help create a safer space with less heteronormative bounds. In these spaces, an intersectional queer crowd finds belonging within their own community, a space where the respondents have found rewards in being or doing queer and have self-invented. The way door policy is implemented in practice seems of fundamental importance to help ensure the fluidity and contingency queer ascribes and prevent queer electronic dance parties to being fossiled into a more scripted experience. That was it. I made a playlist from some of the favorite songs of the people I interviewed with some tracks that I added. So yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lobsang. I'm a PhD student in sociology at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And Dorothy.
Yes, hi. I'm so sorry, I'm just so bad with the PPT. I'm Dorothy, and I'm also a first year student of sociology at GNU, New Delhi.
So the title of our paper is Thursdays Are for Queers, Politics of Subversion and Privilege in an Indian Nightclub. To begin with, even post the decriminalization of same-sex liaisons in India in the year 2018, the heteronormative order continues to predominate the public imagination to such an extent that very few places exist for people of the queer community. In the capital city of Delhi, Club Sunshine, name anonymized, is one of those few spaces which can be considered safe. Though we are terming it as a queer club for the sake of convenience, in fact, it actually is a restro club, pub club kind of situation, as one of the reviewers on Google Review says. It must be noted that the club doesn't explicitly calls itself as a queer space, but it organizes and hosts LGBTQI themed events and drag shows. Situated in a posh upper class neighborhood in South Delhi, the club also hosts its famous Pink Thursdays every week for members of the community. The club, which is open throughout the week, specifically lights up on Thursdays with people thronging around the dance floor with colorful outfits. So the sensorial experience of being in Club Sunshine becomes a very immersive and vibrant experience altogether, where diverse expressions of identity and freedoms come alive. The space is charged with pulsating music, electronic beats, remixes of Bollywood hits, and pop anthems that amplify the energy. Bright, colorful light flickers, casting neon glows across the crowd. The air is thick with a mix of perfume, sweat, and anticipation, while laughters and conversations blend into the background hum. One can notice a very significant change in their clientele as well. The presence of queer people are lesser on days other than Thursdays. As one of our respondents who we met during the first visit to the club aptly remarked, Thursdays are for queers. It is through these articulations and deliberations that we investigate not only the subversive potentiality of queer friendly nightclubs in India, but also understand the ephemeral nature of such spaces where a designated night, which in our case is only on Thursdays, attains a special category on its own. Moreover, queer-friendly nightclubs in India provides a preferable state of subverting the heteronormative structures that constrict them of the agency in the global south. Nightclub in a city like Delhi thus becomes an arena where, for a momentary period of time, queer people's desires and their identities are somehow partially realized and even accepted. Moreover, in India, nightclubs are an important area of such research altogether, as it overtly underlines the contestation between Western modernity and Indian conventional Indian traditions. However, in spite of the significance of these spaces, both queer and urban studies have largely ignored the Indian nightclub. Uh, Thus, the methods. Our paper seeks to conduct an exploratory ethnographic study of one such nightclub located in an upper class neighborhood in Delhi, which is considered as a queer friendly space and hosts queer nights on Thursdays. Coupled with in depth interviews with six interview participants ranging from ages between 21 to 29 years, one of the chief questions that our paper seeks to answer is, in what ways uh, does the nightclub provide a safe space or not for the members of the community in Delhi? Furthermore, it is also of significance that class and caste uh, are largely coterminous in Indian society and plays a major role in the formation and sustenance of social relations. Does it then question the subversive potentiality expected of such a safe space? Or is it a site of privilege for the upper caste, gay men, over the expense of other sexual and gendered minorities? Does this club then merely fall within the category of an elite public sphere in the Habermasian sense? Dorothy.
Hello.
Go ahead.
All right. Wait. Can you see the screen? No, they can't.
Good.
All right. All right. Yeah. So sorry, I'm just bad at the PPT thing. So I'll just go with what I have to say. Okay. So the question is, does merely calling it a queer space actually make it a safe space? Is it actually inclusive to all members of the queer community, irrespective of which section one belongs to? So literature on the issue of hierarchization, uh, on the issue of hierarchization in the queer space shows the exclusionary nature of these spaces, which mark some sections of the community as the queer unwanted, which mostly include sections such as women. So basically, mostly it's based on one's sexuality, on one's gender, it's based on one's ability. Uh, that is whether one is able or differently abled, or it's also based on class, it's based on beauty, as some people have stated. I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to share the screen. Okay, wait, I'll just stop the video. Hello?
We cannot see you. We have no PowerPoint data.
Okay, can you see it?
Fantastic.
Okay, hello. Can you guys hear me? Hello.
All is good.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So there exists the queer unwanted, as scholars like Mark Casey have stated. And in their work, we have found that, which is mostly centered in the global north, we find that gay men, they mostly outnumber lesbian women in the spaces. And as me and Lobsang have also found in our ethnography, we see that the ratio of men to women is roughly 12:1. That is, men vastly outnumber women in the spaces. Also, trans people are really less in number, and they too are vastly outnumbered by queer men in the spaces. As one of our respondents had exclaimed, "Where are the lesbians?" When asked if she feels safe in the club, another respondent of ours, who is a lesbian, aged 25 years, she states that being a woman, she feels unsafe going out of her house in a public space, no matter whether it is populated by men who are gay or men who are straight. It doesn't really matter. Some women even claimed being uncomfortable and being stared at by men in the club. Even the location of the club in itself is elitist, as it is inaccessible to public transportation. That is, it's far away from the metro station, and one has to take a super expensive cab in order to reach this location, on top of paying for super expensive food and drinks as well. And the chief mode of communication in these spaces is English. And as you might know, English is not the first language in India. So all of these factors, it does in itself cancel out a lot of the sections of the population. And in all of our visits, we have not seen anybody, like we have not seen even one physically challenged person. So I think all of these speaks of the unwanted nature that queerness has within itself. So now for the caste question, which Lobsang has talked about, that is one of our limitations, because we haven't been able to ask people what their caste is directly, because caste is a sensitive issue. But given the fact that in literature it is already established that caste and class are largely coterminous, that is, upper caste people are mostly the ones who also have the majority of the wealth in society. So as our starting point in our research, we are going with the fact that most people are probably upper caste. So now for the second question, is the public sphere, like, can we call Club Sunshine, as we termed it, a public sphere in the Habermasian sense, given the fact that it is exclusionary in nature? So Jürgen Habermas talks of a public sphere as an arena wherein private individuals come in to the public, that is, to spaces like restaurants, clubs, or in newspaper columns, and they leave behind, or they bracket their individual private selves, and they come into the public sphere, and then they talk about things that are of importance to the public. That is, they talk about things that could go on to then influence the political in a large sense. So what Habermas talks about is this public sphere is open to all. It is democratic. So anybody who has the active voice and is able to come in and have a rational discussion with proper language can actually come in and speak in the public sphere and engage in the discussions. But the main problem with Habermas's idea of the public sphere is highlighted by scholars like Nancy Fraser and Michael Warner, who have pointed out that the mere assumption that the public sphere is open for all, that in itself is problematic, as it does not constitute the non-reading public, the non-academic public, who is not merely interested in what you call the rational discussion. This includes women and their everyday gossip, their private lives, their domesticity. It does not include people who are the working class and their everyday life stories of drudgery. And so what then happens is that all of these subordinate sections of the society, they go on to create parallel public spaces wherein they are able to talk about their own experiences and hence constitute a conflicting sphere in opposition to the dominant public sphere that Habermas talks about. And Nancy Fraser, she shows how women have been constantly doing it through protests and by talking about their private lives, etc. But Michael Warner specifically has talked about how queer people have been creating counter publics by bringing in effect and by bringing in talks of sexuality, which is mostly seen to be something of that they seem to be relegated to the private sphere, and that is seen to not be a proper discourse that can be talked about in the public sphere because it is just something that's private to you. But by bringing these talks about one's sex life and what is private to them into the public sphere, queer people have been able to create an identity for themselves, which otherwise would not have been possible for them. And hence they have indulged in this sort of world making. So when we talk about it in this sense, it does sound like, yes, in this sense, it is our nightclub, that is the one we're researching, is a counter public because it does bring about the voices of the marginalized, of the subordinate, and they're able to create a niche space of their own for discourse. But at the same time, given the fact that this space is highly exclusionary, we find that it still is, on the face of it, it seems that it is open for all. It's Thursday. Thursdays are for queers. But when we look underneath the surface and do some ethnography, we find that it in fact is very much a public sphere in the Habermasian sense. Thank you.